We're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening again. I'd like to call the committee of the whole for the Village of Cary for October 3rd, 2023 to order with roll call, please.
McAlpine?
Here.
Stefani?
Here.
Weinhammer?
Here.
Walrath?
Here.
Collier?
Here.
Dudek?
Here.
Please join me again with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Public comment, where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. This place cleared out. I have nobody signed in, so I guess we'll go ahead and close open forum at 6:59. One thing for discussion is lead service line replacement discussion. I'll turn this over. Is Director Noonan taking this?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, Village Board. I don't know why it would clear out. This is riveting information.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about lead service lines and give you an update on where we're at. Staff, John, Tim, all the operations guys have done a great job in identifying where our lead service lines are now, and they continue to do that just as every other community in the country. So an update on where we're at, what our options are, and try and get some feedback from you guys on how you'd like to see this implemented going forward. Here we are. This is our confirmed lead service line locations. We've got 23 as of right now. Got a great visual here, show you where they are in relation to town. Most of them on West Main Street. We have 14. Crystal, we've got 3, and then 1 on each of those remaining streets: East Main, Charlotte, Krenz, Northwest Highway, School, and Spring. There are 23 confirmed locations. They're all on the private side of the B-Box. So we got our public side and the private side. Everything we found thus far, and all 23 have been on the private side of the service line. I'll give you a brief visual in relation to the TIF3 that just passed. This is the map with an overlay of what we just saw on that last slide. So 9 of those 23 are within that TIF district. And staff's working on 97 more locations that they need to verify. We have 13 that staff has known that they're unknown on the village side. And on the private side, 51 of those locations where the village side is confirmed, and it's not lead, but we still need to get into the homeowner side. And 33 locations where both sides are unknown, but assumed not to be lead due to the age of the infrastructure. So if you're unfamiliar, in 1986, no more lead. So we look at when those houses were built, and we can go off of that data to verify that it's a non-lead service line. So we're narrowing down. We've been distributing with the homeowners, knocking on doors, putting hangers out there to try and engage them to call us or talk to them directly. If we have a service call, we verify what's in there while we're there. So they're doing everything they can. We're coming down to the nitty-gritty of trying to figure out where exactly we stand, so we have solid numbers to work with. Recently reached out to all the communities on this slide here to see what they're doing and how they're addressing it. So as you can see on here, Algonquin, Fox River Grove, Huntley, McHenry, Wakanda, they're all using their water funds, and they vary from 20 lead service lines to 1,000. Crystal Lake and West Dundee, they're utilizing IEPA low interest loans. And Crystal Lake is considering a service charge on their water bill to help address this. Barrington, they got a low interest loan, and once that runs out, they anticipate they'll still have 600 to 800 more, and from there they're just going to use their water fund to address the remaining. And then Lake in the Hills, who everyone's jealous of, has zero lead service lines and doesn't have to worry about what the remaining do, so. Just putting some rough numbers out there, what we typically see in the industry is $10,000 to $15,000 a service line. So depending on how long that service line is and what obstacles the contractor has to go through, giving you some numbers here, 23 is where we stand. So if as it stands today, we're looking at between $230,000 to $345,000 estimated, and we anticipate through those 97 remaining service lines that we have to inventory, we might find a few more. So conservatively, I put up to 40. We don't think we'll end up that high, but just to give us an idea where it may stand when we're all said and done. The boring part of it that we've all read, the state statute, what it tells us our requirements are. And they've changed it slightly, but it's a long document. Highlighted as the main portions of it. We're required to develop, implement, and maintain a comprehensive water service line material inventory and comprehensive lead service line replacement plan. Over the last several years, we've had to put in our inventory. In this coming April of 2024, we have to have that final inventory completed. And then we have to do that every year following up to 2027, where we have to have that replacement plan. Due to how many service lines we have, under 1,200, we're required to replace 7% up to 15 years. So what it all comes down to are what are our options and how can we address this. So there's nothing in the state statute that says that we can't require the homeowner to change theirs. Because it's not on the public side, we can present that the homeowner is responsible for replacing 100% of that. There's different options that have been discussed throughout the industry on how to do that. One being under the village line item here, we can utilize the water fund, which we see a lot of the other municipalities doing. The village could pay up front, and the homeowner would get charged back over a course of 10, 15, 20 year. We've heard people presenting the idea of a zero interest loan over that term to help finance that with the homeowner. Or we could utilize the IEPA low interest loans. One of the challenges that has come up is if you make the homeowner responsible, there's some questions as to if the homeowner has the option to sign a waiver, and a waiver that they are not going to connect, and if the reason they're not going to connect, they claim financial burden. The APA has been pushing back on that, saying that's not an option to replace it for public health, that you have to, so they push back on the village to say, hey, you guys need to come up with a plan to address this. And that's kind of where we stand as far as the whole system. Where we're working towards to the finish line, and what our options are to fund this. Looking for some direction on how you guys perceive this to move forward, and if there's any thoughts or opinions or any other comments related to it, any other information you guys would like to see.
How have we been paying for it? The ones that we've done already?
I don't think
We haven't replaced any.
We haven't
Again,
replaced
thank
any.
you, Director Noonan. This is yet again another unfunded mandate presented by the state of Illinois. They demand that we do these things, and we're scrambling right now to try to figure out. There were or are grant opportunities out there, but through the documents that I see through the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, we are so much better off than a lot of these other communities. You just look at our neighboring, Barrington and Crystal Lake. I mean, those are detrimental dollars that they have to spend. I think what we're looking for is, how do we want to pay for this? What's the best way for us to make sure that we're in compliance by the deadline? We don't have to replace everything every year. We have a number of years to comply. But I find it, I don't know, it just really gets me crazy that we're put in these situations. But we have to figure it out. we have to come up with a solution. So what do you guys think?
Is our fund balance in water right now?
I don't have that handy in front of me, but I do know that based on the recent rate study, that our water and sanitation funds are healthy. And obviously, the rate increases that were recently implemented were were not significant compared to some of our neighboring communities because of that fact, and it does remain very solvent. That being said, this evening's feedback that Director Noonan is seeking kind of ties to two questions. I guess first, does the village want us to consider handling through this requirement in the program the replacement all the way to the house through the private side? As you see on the slide here, that is the approach that some of our neighboring communities have taken, especially given the parameters that Director Noonan mentioned. And then two, if we do the private side, are there any preferences or feedback with regards to the funding source? Through our CIP process and the rate study, we anticipated that there wouldn't be a huge number of lead service lines in our jurisdiction left. And that so far, based on the work of John Stein's team, it seems to be panning out that way. But that being said, we could still take that approach and through the different rate periods account for that in our water and sanitation or our water fund budget. But if there's a desire to seek other opportunities, as mentioned, whether it's low interest loan programs, which we are attempting to use for the new well project out at the southwest part of town. So keeping that in mind, that we do have other opportunities that we're trying to use in that regard.
We still have two IUP loans, don't we?
Yes. So that would be our third that we're requesting.
Again, another unfunded mandate, just saying.
And then the TIF also is another option that's out there as well that was shown in the slides.
Well,
What's the, can you go back to the cost of projects?
10 to 15.
Typically, what we see in lead service line replacement, depending on the length of service from the street to the house, is between 10 and 15. Some can go under, can go a little bit over. You know, if there's a tree removal that they've got to go around because you got a big.
So, am I understanding this correctly, then? If we have 40, the maximum, your estimate of the maximum, and, sorry about that, if we have 40, and the 600,000, that's then going from the main into the house, so it's also taking the private side, correct?
So what we found is the public side is, Courtney, can you go to that first slide? The public side, from the main to the B box, which is our side, is copper. From the B box into the house, all 23 confirmed, those are the lead. So the village's portion that we own is copper, we're good.
Okay.
It's the public side, or the private side, that's the lead, so going
Okay.
into the house.
So here's my take on this. Let's say it's 23 houses. Those 23 houses, if they're not fixed and paid for quickly, they put a cloud over the whole village. Because water is very important. It's talked about constantly all over the place. We had that issue a little bit earlier, right, where we had to shut down the well because of, or the water tower rather, because of
We were just
something
being
was
very-
above the rating, remember, a little bit earlier? Okay.
We're being proactive.
So that kind of stuff, when it gets out in the public, can really taint the viewpoint of a community, in my opinion. And I think that when you have, it's almost like schools. When you have good schools, the whole village benefits. When you have good water, the whole village benefits. Personally, I think we should do into the home. I think that we should add it to everybody's bill. I don't know how much that would be, but I think all the residents that pay and the businesses that pay water should see some sort of an increase to specifically take care of that, and we should check this thing off as not having to deal with it anymore. Fix it and be done.
So you're recommending a surcharge to whatever the final number is, that we would divide that up
would
through
be-
the entire community?
I would like to know the option of the IEPA rate or the IEPA loan, what the rate is. I mean, we're in a high-rate environment today, so does it make sense to take out a loan? I don't know. But I think that's where we go to our finance people and say, based on our projections, it would cost the average water payer, an extra $1.10 a month. And And as soon as we clear this out, be done with it.
Well, that's in a sense what you're doing if you're increasing the water, if you're doing a water rate study and building it into it. Everyone's paying
But
for it.
we were gonna, if we did the water rate study, we were gonna increase the rates just because we were not consistent with the rest of our
Well, right, but I'm saying if you're incorporating this, you're doing the same thing by getting everybody to pay for it if you're putting that into it.
Right.
My personal opinion is the majority of homes that this is affecting are going to be some smaller, older homes. I don't think that the burden, that those homeowners are going to have the ability to just pay for that all themselves. So I want to look at some of the other options out there. I do want to look at an IEPA loan, see what those rates are, because they are not normally market rate. They're normally a pretty aggressive program. I'd like to kind of check those options, but I definitely do not want it to be the residents' responsibility, because I just don't think that those homeowners are going to have the funds to be able to do that. And I agree wholeheartedly with what Trustee Dudek said. It impacts us. If we had a reputation of a bad water, that will plummet our reputation of this village like tomorrow. So we just cannot afford to have that happen. So we have to find a solution to get this done and as cost effectively as possible. But again, not, I don't think when people bought a house that they come out and said, hey, this is going to have lead-based paints here, lead-based pipes here, just like lead-based paint was the big thing. So I don't think that they should bear the burden of that. I think that we as a village have to look at a way to fund this, this unfunded mandate. We got to find a way to fund it. So I'm open to looking at the different options that are available out there.
How many of the houses actually fell in the TIF district?
13
What we found is 9 of them.
or 9.
Nine?
within the district.
9 in worst case scenario of the 40, so quarter of it, okay.
Are we going to lose Trustee Waller? Oh, you're switching it, okay.
So I just have a question, just asking like clarification for Trustee Dudek or anybody on the board. So if we were going to go ahead and put a fee in for the water bill, and it would be a monthly fee, would we stop that additional fee once it's paid? Or are we going to do like, to your point, how much is it? So is it a small enough dollar amount that it could just be one additional, or do we need to do it over time? But I guess my big question is, would we stop it once it's paid for?
I'll give you my answer, which is probably not going to be the answer that staff would give. If we did a water rate study, Eric, anybody on the, can tell me if I'm wrong here, we're probably middle of the pack. We're not going to be at the top end. We've never been on the top end of any electric, water, you name it. So if we go ahead and do a study, the likelihood is the information we're going to get as a board is going to say you're middle of the pack, maybe even below middle of the pack. We've served on boards, some of us here, that said, okay, let's raise our rate then. But we never had, please correct me if I'm wrong, we never had an identified purpose for that. We just raised it because we were not competitive with others. I would think, Jennifer, and this is just me, I would think that that's what would happen here, and then that excess would take care of this, versus saying that it needs to be $1 per household or per water paying unit in order to come up with $600,000 maximum, and then when we've paid it, then it goes back down. That would be my interpretation of what the village would do, because we haven't backed down any of the increases that we've done before. We stay in line with competition.
Well, let's go.
I know a couple years ago, we had to increase it because we had to, kind of like the no wipes in the pipe thing. Thank you. Yes, go ahead and say that out loud so Rick can hear.
For the phosphorus study we had to increase for some of the requirements to remove, right?
And there was a good significant increase from what I recall. I guess I like Rick's idea of, if I'm understanding you correctly, of having like a fee, but I'd like to have that fee stop once it's paid for, like that additional fee. But that's
And
just me.
maybe if I may to give some context, like with the phosphorus removal project, and like any capital project that's required in our budgets, but particularly in our water and sewer rate studies, those are capital projects that are factored into our capital needs along with operations. The scale that we're talking about here that Director Noonan has put together, they're not the scale that some of our neighboring communities are having to deal with. Every community will have, Kellen, correct me if I'm wrong, 15 years once that clock starts from the statutes to accomplish that. The numbers we're talking about here are, of a very, it's a six-figure number. Don't get me wrong, but it's not a number that is
not
unmanageable
catastrophic.
in the span of 3 rate periods throughout our water and sewer operations. So the towns that are probably looking at a surcharge are probably having to deal with numbers that are 7 figures or more. So that's why the rates themselves, to throw that onto everybody's bills, is a little bit of a different discussion. So I think from the board's perspective, we'll look at the impacts on what that might be, but I don't want, I guess, that facet of surcharge to be too big of a focus, because we don't know if that's needed at this point.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at the numbers here, and then, again, you have 15 years or 3 rate periods to
Divide
spread
that
that
up.
out. Not that, and that's another policy decision we'll have to make. We don't have to wait 15 years, given the numbers that are shown
Is
here.
there
Yeah.
anything in, that we have now for a project coming up out of water funds that can be delayed that isn't public health risk? To pay for this project now and be done with it? Because if we push it 15 years down the road, it's gonna cost more as we do it.
There's obviously different priorities for every project.
Right, I know.
I'll defer to Public Works to answer that one, though.
Well, one of the things, I just want to clarify something that Trustee Dudek had just mentioned. When we do our rate studies, it's not to be competitive and that kind of stuff. There are capital improvements that we plan, that staff plans for, 5 and 10 years for the improvements. The wells break down, the pumps break down, just the infrastructure down at the processing center, the water treatment plant. I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm talking about pig processing or something. Where did that come from? No, but I think that we are very conservative when we make these things, because we don't want the public to just, slide. We want to make sure that anytime we look at a rate increase, that it's for a specific purpose. But I want people to know that if we're doing a rate increase, this is what this specific purpose is. That said, we have a long period of time to accomplish this goal. We do have some of these that are within the TIF, that the TIF could help pay for that once it starts generating funds. But once the go button is hit, we have X number of years to comply. And if we've got, we'll say, I'm not going to say 40, I'm going to say 30. I'm going to be optimistic about this, that we will have, if we did, 2 or 3 a year for that prolonged period of time, we'll be done. And it really wouldn't be that big of a burden on our budget for our water and sewer fund. That's just my thought.
Can I ask a question, though, about if we went, and I get that, I personally want to get it all done as quickly as possible. I don't want a 15-year, I want to get it done, rip off the Band-Aid, get it done, let's figure out how we're going to pay for it. My question is, are we able to take out an IEPA loan, for example, and then pay it with TIF funds, once the TIF is generating money? Can we use it as collateral for an IEPA loan? I just don't know.
Sure, you're gonna.
What impact is the lead lines on the rest of the village's water line? The lead lines mostly just affect the household.
Right.
It doesn't contaminate the rest of the water line for the whole thing to it. So the rest of the village isn't impacted by the lead lines, just those homeowners are. So, so to worry about the whole water system because of a few lead lines, I think it's a little I've been changing these things for years, and some people lived in them 50, 60 years, never had any issues to it, but it's something that's got to get done, but it's not something that's dire.
And I don't think it's dire. I'm just saying, when you have a mandate like that, I think the longer you drag it out, the more costly it's going to be. So if you say it's going to be $10,000 to do, and we're doing it over 15 years, that $10,000, just like permits, is going to go up how much?
Yeah, road
Right?
repairs
So
are
all of
more
a sudden,
expensive, materials are more
it's
expensive,
kind of
right.
like it's cheaper sometimes to get it done at the current rate. I don't think the cost is going to go down, is all I'm getting at. So that's why I feel like if we know about it and it's not a huge amount, is there a way, let's look at what we've got in our fund. What do we have in the fund? Can we do it with what we've got? Can we not? Do we do supplement another way? You know, I think we've got some moving parts here that if we have some information, we can make a well-informed decision how to best proceed with funding this.
Yeah, and a lot of other ones I've done is when they replace water mains, they do it then too. If you've got any water main replacement ones, do it. It's
Yep.
more economical to do that. all those things
Exactly.
too, but
Makes
just-
sense.
Yeah.
When you
I
say
appreciate
Yeah,
that.
that's a good point, because some of the communities are faced with that challenge, because if it affects I think the state statute said if it affects the water main, if it's on our side and we replace it, we are obligated to take it to the home. So if it's just from the private sector, we are not obligated to do that, but we're trying to figure out a way that we could do this, financially soundly. So, I mean,
You're correct, Mayor. We because of that requirement, in the event we encounter one from other just maintenance work or other projects, we have money built into our rate study in our capital budget to address at least those that may be encountered. And to answer Trustee McAlpine's question, with that EPA loan program, we would get into the details of how we would best support that application and repay it if we go through that process. But keeping in mind that the EPA has a finite amount of money that program is involved with, so it's a competitive process. So given, again, the very low number of lines that we have and the fact that we do have a very healthy water fund,
We will
I
not
don't know
get
that
the
we'll rate
money.
very high.
That's what you're saying. I get it.
I didn't want to come out and say that. I
No,
didn't
you
want to be
just
the
say
bad
it.
guy to
I'd
say that.
rather,
but
I'd rather say we're not going to, so it's not a viable option.
I do not think the Village of Cary would qualify for
Okay.
it. There are other communities that are in dire needs of this, and will be,
I-
and we're fiscally sound. We've got reserves, we've got surplus, and.
Then we should look at other
Yeah,
options.
yeah.
To me, then we should take that option off the table and not say it's really a viable option.
And we'll show, obviously, more specific impacts to rates or estimates at least once we get to the budget process. But just at high level, looking at the numbers here, say we're in the mid-range of what's estimated. We're not talking about a significant burden on the capital fund for the water system.
Is there any expectation that the state of Illinois, once they put this kind of in motion, that they're going to put funds out there that are available to us? I know, but I find it hard to believe. I mean, if you think about, it's a federal thing right now that's what they're pushing. So it's like there's got to be funds out there for this. I feel like.
I'm certain there might be, and jump in, but they'll be competitive though. Again,
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. And I understand for us compared to a lot of other communities, it's a fraction of their.
Right.
But
Yeah,
just curious.
when this all first came out, they started to do low interest loans at 100% forgiveness, and then they realized very quickly that those funds were not going to survive because that program relies on people paying back those loans. So, like Eric said, or Administrator Muramoto said, they're very competitive, and reiterating what the mayor and the administrator mentioned, someone who deals with this on a daily basis and hears about it all the time. Every conference you go to, every time you open a webinar, they're talking about lead service lines. I would like to stress to you guys that you are in a very good position, because there are other places like we see with Crystal Lake who have 2,000, and they're struggling and coming from somewhere where they had a lot of lead service lines. There's a lot of people that are in really not very good shape, and coming here and talking with staff, and they're telling me we have 23. It was like you could breathe. That's a relief to other municipalities. And reaching out today, talking to other municipalities, saying, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" They're like, "Oh, you're probably in the same boat we are. We got a couple hundred." I'm like, "You don't want to hear what we have. We have 23. Oh, you're in really good shape." So. Stressing that as well. We do have issues that we'll need to address in the future, and we're trying to figure out how to move past this one. So,
When is the expectation that you're going to know for sure how many houses are technically out there?
how many, confirmed total?
Yeah. I know it's based on if someone's home and
Mr. Stein, would you
there's a
like
lot. I know.
Come on up. Yes, come on up. Join the party. Yeah.
You live at the Public Works Building.
Yes.
We have to have the final inventory April 15th of
Okay.
next year. We're supposed to have everything identified, how many we have the final number. like I said, I think we have 101 we need to either get in the house or some we have to dig up to verify. We're in very good shape, as we've said, 2023. I think the big thing, I've heard lots of conversation, and I think Eric brought up, I think we budgeted as this last rate study, I think, was it 30 or 60,000? I think it's 30. Because right now, if we happen to find one leaking, or if we are digging and expose one and we damage it, we have to replace it within 15 days, and we have to give the people. There's a lot in that, as Karen, if you read that we have to do. We have to supply the people with filters, special filters. We have that stuff ready to go. So we budgeted, because we figured some of this will take contractors' help, because it will, and Dave can attest to the outside work, plus to change over the inside plumbing work. I think it's 30,000 we have right now every year.
It's roughly 245,000 over the 5-year period.
Over the 5-year period for this, so we have money already in what you approved last year. Can we move projects around? We're always doing that, so I think the big thing we're looking for is, do we want to take on the private side and replace it ourselves? So is that what you would like us to do? We have options here, and that's what we're looking for, and I think I've been doing this a long time. I think I can do anything when it comes to water and wastewater. So I would say if you say, yes, we want to take that and change these out, we'll make it happen. You know, and it's not that big a sum of money. And you think, do we want to do it in a 2-year? Do we want to do it? I think we have to start, is it 2026 is the first year we have to start, or 27? 27 we have to start, and we have 14 years to complete the 23 or the 30 or whatever we find. 3% a year. It goes up, I think, to 7% if you have under a certain number. It's not that many. You're talking 3-4 years to meet what the EPA requires. I'd like to get them off my plate. Sure would. You know, it's interesting that when you're talking on one side, we just finished a lead and copper sampling. We sample homes to see if anything's leaching in. And I said to the EPA, when we get all these changed, I'm done sampling. They go, no, you're going to continue to sample. I'm like, well, we have the let out. So, trying to figure them out, story for another day, but I think it's a doable thing, but what direction do you want to give us? And I think we can make a plan to make it happen. And if you say 1 year, that might be tough. It's a couple of years. I hope I'm not in trouble. But,
Can you come to my office and this is over?
Before you go
Thank
to
you.
his office, I'm going to again say, to me, this is a public safety issue.
Sure.
And the last thing in the world I'd want to see is, some child or some elderly person in any of these homes come down with something that, a doctor associates with lead poisoning. That would be horrendous for the village of Cary, period. So to me, if staff and my colleagues up here feel as I do, I'd like to get this done at one time, and I'd like it to start as soon as possible. And if we have the money, or if we want to, say we have the money, but we'll still apply for the IEPA loan, because if we don't get the IEPA loan, you still have the money, it's still a decision to move forward. Doesn't sound like we're bantering about the funding of it as much as the decision to move forward, because it's kind of what I think you guys are looking for from us, the decision.
Well, I think if we're going to pay for the one, getting to the private line.
Yeah.
That's down here.
Replace to the home.
Absolutely. I say, again,
It's a
even
small
though you
number.
might say it's not the main water like Mr. Miller was explaining, which I understand completely, again, it's just going to take one time where something happens incorrectly and someone comes down with something that's based upon lead-based water, that they've somehow ingested that. I just don't see that the risk is there, and I think that our community, I think we need to show that safety, we always say safety with our police force is number one. We want safety to be for people's water, what they're drinking, whatever's going on in through their homes. So I think that if we're looking for direction, I say let's move forward, and we can figure out, we've got plenty of financing options. I think we can figure that out as we move forward, but I would like to see it go as quickly as possible. It's just my humble opinion.
Okay.
How long do you think realistically would it take to replace, if we were to do an expedient replacement, what would that look like?
30 of them?
Yeah.
If we hired a contractor. I think they could easily do one a day, maybe two, depending on if there's different technologies, or they have to open trench, or if they can pull the old one out, pull the new one in. It's pretty slick, but I would think, I don't wanna put a contractor in the room on the spot, but I would think one a day is definitely, I mean, I think I could do one a day. Or-
Well, is this
or-
anything, I mean, some of these smaller properties or the easier ones, is that something we could do in-house to defray some of those costs?
We said that we have so much on our plate, I mean, yeah, we could do it. We have the technology, we have the capability. It's just, we would still have to hire, once we got to have a plumber come in and change over, hook up to the existing lines inside the home.
If I may touch on that, part of the state statute, if we're doing it, how they get into the house, some of the concern with municipalities is, well, we take on that liability, it's going through the foundation of their house. So if the house starts to crack after 2 or 3 years, they say, village, you damaged my house. State statute has language in there, if we hire a contractor, that they have to hold us harmless for that, so.
Okay. Enough said. The contractor it is, yeah.
And real quick, as far as, we sample 30 houses every 3 years for lead and copper. We just finished that. This year's our 3rd year. I've been reviewing, don't have all the results, but so far, every house that has participated, I've only seen one above they call it the action limit. And actually, that's a house that does not have a lead service. It has copper piping with lead and solder. That they're above it. The rest of them, it's a non-detect or below. And basically, I'd call it non-detect. So it's not a huge issue. And we see that in my experience. I mean, they've been doing this, they started this lead thing 30 years ago. I can remember setting them up in another town. They've been taking samples every 3 years. Some of our residents have been doing this for us for every 3 years for 33 years now. We've only seen a few, and some of them, they'll have a fancy lead old fixture, and that's for the lead. It's inside the home, but it's not typical that you see in other towns I've worked for that it's leaching in like that. But it is a concern. I'd like to just get it off our plate.
I think Deputy Director Stein kind of summarized the feedback we're looking for tonight really, really concisely, which is, does the village want us, the village to consider looking at taking care of the private side with the lead service line replacement? And that would be, again, part of our preliminary replacement plan that would be submitted. So I'm hearing the consensus, correct me if I'm wrong, that that's what the board would like us to look at. The board sounds like you want us to look at different funding options, which I would say we wouldn't answer that tonight. We would answer that as part of our next CIP and budget process. That is going to be, obviously, we're working on preparing that this fall, which would be in parallel to our submittals to the EPA for the lead service line replacements. And then third, it sounds like the board consensus that as we look at those funding options and how we would handle it, you would like us to at least look at the different parameters of the timelines, but preferring that we would try and replace more sooner.
Because there'll be another one coming down the pipe, right?
Yes, indeed.
Eric,
Excuse
I'd like
me?
to see, if possible, to 2027. So, and the reason why I say that is I would start outside the TIF, and part of the point of the TIF is to do the infrastructure. So I would like to see what it would look like if we were to start outside and then kind of work our way into the TIF, actually use funds from there to offset. I know it'll take a couple of years to get the TIF money and all that, but.
Yep, yeah, exactly. We will factor all those different options with our budget process.
Okay, any other comments? You've got clear, concise direction, as usual. Thank you to the board. Okay, since there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:38. Thank you, Trustee Walworth, for joining us.
Thank you all.
Hope it's fun in Nebraska.
Severe thunder